Leonardo da Vinci drew the human heart with such accuracy that surgeons who study his sketches today say they could have been made last week. He designed flying machines 400 years before the first aircraft flew. He never went to university. He had no formal scientific training. He left most of his greatest projects unfinished. He was frequently in debt, and he is regarded by many as the greatest genius who ever lived. This is his story, and it is stranger than you think. Leonardo was born in 1452 in a small town in Tuscany, Italy. His parents were not married, and in those days that changed everything. He could not become a lawyer like his father. He could not join most professional groups. He was educated, he was smart, he was talented, but many doors were simply closed to him. Most people in that situation give up. Leonardo went in a completely different direction. At 14, he went to work in the studio of a man named Verrocchio. Verrocchio was one of the best artists in Florence. Painter, sculptor, goldsmith. And Florence at that time was the most exciting city in Europe. The richest families spent enormous amounts of money on art and ideas. Artists, thinkers, and architects came from everywhere. Leonardo walked into all of it at 14. Curious about everything, limited by nothing. There is a story that people still tell about this period. Verrocchio was painting a scene from the Bible. He asked his young student Leonardo to paint one of the angels. When Verrocchio saw what Leonardo had painted, he put down his brush. He said he would never paint again, because his student had already become better than him. Nobody can say for certain if this happened exactly this way, but you can go and check for yourself. The painting is in the Uffizi Gallery in Florence today. Find the angel on the left. You will understand immediately what Verrocchio saw. By the age of 20, Leonardo was an official painter in Florence. He was already remarkable, but being remarkable was not enough for him. He did not just want to paint beautiful things. He wanted to understand everything he painted. How does light move across a face? How does the human body actually work inside? He did not want to copy what he saw. He wanted to understand why it looked the way it did. So he started studying dead bodies. This was not legal. The church did not allow it. Leonardo did it anyway. Over his life, he studied at least 30 human bodies this way. He drew the muscles of the arm and shoulder, the inside of the heart, a baby growing inside its mother. Nobody had ever drawn these things so carefully before. Nobody had ever asked so many questions about how the body works. And he was not only studying bodies, he was also asking questions about water, about rocks, about birds, about the sky. He noticed that the tops of mountains sometimes had fossils of sea animals, on top of mountains. He asked himself why, and he came to a conclusion that modern science would confirm. 500 years later, those mountains had once been under the sea. He figured this out alone, just by looking carefully, just by asking why. In 1482, he moved to Milan. He wanted to work for the most powerful man in the city, a duke named Ludovico Sforza. The letter he wrote to get the job is fascinating. He lists everything he can do: build bridges, design weapons, create buildings, make sculptures in marble and bronze. At the very end, almost like an afterthought, he mentions that he can also paint. He got the job. In Milan, he worked on an enormous project, a giant horse statue made of bronze. It would have been the largest bronze statue in the world. He spent years planning and building it. A full-size model made of clay was finished. People came from across Italy to see it. It was considered extraordinary. Then the French army invaded Milan. French soldiers found the clay model and used it for target practice. It was destroyed. Leonardo never made the bronze version. He simply moved on to the next thing. This would happen again and again throughout his life. A giant project, years of work, never finished. Also in Milan, he painted The Last Supper. It covers an entire wall of a monastery dining room. The painting shows the moment Jesus tells his followers that one of them will betray him. 12 men, 12 completely different reactions. Shock, disbelief, guilt, sadness, anger. Every face tells a different story. Leonardo spent days just standing in front of the empty wall. Not painting, just thinking. The man who ran the monastery complained. Leonardo was wasting time, he said. Leonardo replied that he was looking for the right face for Judas, the man who would betray Jesus. If he could not find the right face, he said he might use the face of the man who was complaining. The complaint stopped immediately. He painted it using a new technique he invented himself. Traditional painting on walls required working very fast. Leonardo could not work fast. He needed time to think, to look again, to change things. His new technique gave him that time, but it also meant the painting started to break down. While he was still alive, he gave up permanence to keep control. 500 years later, after many repairs and restorations, the painting is still there, still extraordinary. In 1499, the French invaded Milan again. Ludovico lost power and Leonardo left the city. He was 47 years old. He spent the next 15 years moving between different Italian cities, working for different people, always filling his notebooks, always asking questions. And somewhere in these years, he painted the Mona Lisa. The Mona Lisa is the most famous painting in the world. Not almost, not probably, the most famous. It hangs today in the Louvre Museum in Paris, protected by bulletproof glass. 10 million people visit it every year. Many are surprised by how small it is. The woman in the painting is believed to be the wife of a businessman from Florence. She sits in a simple chair. Behind her is a landscape that looks slightly different on the left and right sides, as if she exists in two different worlds at the same time. And then there is the smile. The smile of the Mona Lisa is the most studied smile in history. Is she happy, sad, hiding something? Leonardo may have painted it this way on purpose. When you look directly at her mouth, she looks neutral. When you look at her eyes and see her mouth at the edge of your vision, she seems to smile, a face that is never quite the same twice. That always seems about to tell you something, and never does. Leonardo never gave the painting to the person who paid for it. He kept working on it, changing small things, making small adjustments. He took it with him wherever he went, for the rest of his life. In 1516, the King of France, Francis I, invited Leonardo to come to France. He was 64 years old. The king gave him a beautiful house, a good salary, an important title, and one simple request: talk to me. Leonardo lived his last 3 years in a small house in the French countryside. The king visited him regularly. They talked about art, science, and life. The king called Leonardo his father. By this point, Leonardo's right hand was no longer working properly. He could not paint anymore, but he could still draw with his left hand. He could still think. He was still asking questions. Leonardo da Vinci died on May 2, 1519. He was 67 years old. After his death, the king said that no man had ever known as much as Leonardo. Not just about art, about everything. He left behind around 13,000 pages of notes and drawings. He planned to publish books about the human body, about water, about birds, about light. He published none of them. After he died, his notebooks were scattered. Some were lost forever. Some were cut into pieces and sold. The 13,000 pages we have today are probably not everything he wrote. Think about that for a moment. 13,000 pages, and it is probably not complete. Leonardo was interested in everything equally. The way water moves around a rock interested him as much as the expression on a human face. The wing of a small insect interested him as much as the design of a cathedral. He could not choose what to pay attention to. Everything pulled at him at the same time. His patrons were often frustrated. They paid for paintings that took years. They paid for statues that were never built. They paid for designs that stayed in notebooks forever. Leonardo was more interested in the question than in the finished answer. Once he understood something, he moved on to the next question, and the next,
Ain't John, there is something beautiful about this.
and something a little sad. He understood more about the world than almost anyone before him, and he shared almost none of it. His discoveries about the human body sat in notebooks that almost nobody read for hundreds of years. If he had published his work on anatomy alone, the history of medicine would have been very different. He did not publish. He kept asking questions, and he left behind 13,000 pages of notes, drawings, and unfinished ideas. Still sitting there, still waiting to be read, still after 500 years, asking questions we have not fully answered. That is Leonardo da Vinci. Before you go, one question for you. If you could ask Leonardo one question, what would it be? Leave your answer in the comments. If today's episode helped your English, please share it with one person who is also learning. See you in the next episode. Take care.